we'll get into the international segment now. And Lindsay, I know you've got something to say about Google and chip implants.
Yes, indeed, I do. Okay, I'll give you a quote first of all. Is Google planning a microchip for people's brains? Engineering boss at the internet giant says sci-fi style technology will begin by helping disabled people control wheelchairs. And further to the quote, but Google is staking its future on a new service which will use the information it holds on registered users to automatically predict their search needs and present them with the data they want. The ultimate ambition is to literally get inside users' heads using search, just remember that quote, using search queries to read their thoughts and then fulfilling their data needs by sending results directly to microchips implanted into people's brains. Now, that was from the Daily Mail on the 22nd of July 2013, which was some time ago. But what brought it to mind was just this week, it suddenly becomes relevant following a meeting in Switzerland at Davos, when the chief executive of Google, Eric Schmidt, spoke during a session on the future of the digital economy. At the World Economics Forum, this is a quote now, at the World Economics Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Google guru Eric Schmidt gave an answer regarding the evolution of the web. I will answer very simply that the internet will disappear, Schmidt said on Thursday. There will be so many IP addresses, so many devices, sensors, things that you are wearing, things that you are interacting with, that you won't even sense it. It will be part of your presence all the time, he explained. Imagine you walk into a room and the room is dynamic. And with your permission and all of that, which he glosses over very quickly, you are interacting with the things going on in the room. A highly personalized, highly interactive, and very, very interesting world emerges, Schmidt concluded. And I've got the links to that, which we'll put in the website. The point I've tried to make of this is that so many people have been freaking out for so long, the idea of we're going to have chips implanted in us. And here they're not even trying to hide it. They're saying this is a really good thing. We're going to put chips in your brain so that when you think of something, we'll be able to give you the answer without you using your equipment. Now that scares hell out of me. If they can go into your brain, what else are they going to pull out? And what else can they put into your brain so that you'll become nice and docile and do exactly what they want? That just the fact that they're actually talking openly about this at this meeting scares hell out of me. But then when I had a look and saw that Soros and a whole lot of other people that go to the Bilderberger meetings were also at this meeting, that didn't surprise me. Okay, over to you.
That's fine. Ethan, you've been away for a little moment. Did you catch most of Lindsay's intro just there?
Yeah, I did, and it's unbelievable how the normalisation of human microchipping, not just the surveillance state. We spoke last week about devices in cars, about smartphones, about the surveillance state in general, but now going to where it goes into your body with human microchips it's unbelievable. And I remember even 3-4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, the notion of human microchipping would be demonized. You'd be called a conspiracy theorist. You would become, a recluse from people if you preach this notion that microchipping is going to come one day. And now they're just normalizing it. And I found an old article while you were reading that, Lindsay, on TOTTnews.com that I found from the Sydney Morning Herald, and it's entitled "Human Microchipping. I've Got You Under My Skin." And this pretty much sums up how they're normalizing human microchipping within the body of people. It says thousands of technology enthusiasts use it as the ultimate app, enabling them to lock and unlock their homes, cars, computers, and mobile phones with a simple wave of a hand. But there's a catch. They must have a microchip inserted into their bodies. The idea may seem weird and painful, but human microchipping appears to appeal not only to amateurs who call themselves biohackers, but also to governments, police forces, medical authorities, and security companies. It involves a hypodermic needle to inject RFID microchips the size of a grain of rice, usually into the person's hand or wrist. The same kind of chip is used for tracking lost pets. The implant sends a unique ID number that can be used to activate devices such as phones and locks, and can link to databases containing limitless information, including personal details such as names, addresses, and health records. And then it goes on to just for a mountain to tell you how good microchipping is and how good RFID tags have benefited society as a thing. And it says the virus was replicated on the swipe cards of the staff accessing his building. They're talking about how this was used, the notion that maybe a human could become infected with a computer virus if they had this in their arm. And it said the virus was replicated on swipe cards of staff accessing his building and infected the university's database. Nonetheless, Gasson and other scientists say a new world with mass populations of computerized people is imminent and inevitable. And I just read this article from the Sydney Morning Herald and said, you can't, this is absolutely unbelievable. This is madness. How can you think that this is good on any remote level? There's no justification to see why this is good on the surface for any person with a semi-functioning brain, John.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. I mentioned last week on the show how Jeff C of Free Radio Revolution about 8 or 9 days ago did a video talking about how implants, subdermal implants in your hand, these aren't a matter of science fiction. These are here, and they're being implanted in people as we speak. And the interesting thing about the article that he spoke about in that video was that people were almost having to volunteer to do it. They weren't doing it by going door to door. They were doing it by going into companies and getting the companies to want to offer it to their employees. So instead of swiping in with a swipe card, you swipe in with the little chip that's in between your thumb and your forefinger. And that's the interesting thing that I took away from all of that. A lot of people imagine this, terrible future where they'll go door to door and start chipping people and taking away those who refuse to chip. No, it's going to be a lot more insidious than that. They'll get people to want the implants. And I don't know if you guys have ever walked past an Apple store when a new iPhone is being released, but I happened to be in Queen Street Mall in Brisbane one day a few months ago. It must have been when the latest iPhone was released. And you never see queues of people because the Queen Street Mall is more of a thoroughfare than it is a queuing area. But I saw all these people queuing up, and I thought, what on earth are they queuing for? And sure enough, what were they queuing? They were queuing up for some phone store to get their latest iPhone. And you look at how many sheep love Apple. This is just one example. I'm not having to go at Apple or any particular company. The point is, people who are so happy with a new iPhone, they really think that this new technology is going to make their life better. You look at how many people dedicate their lives to posting on forums about new technology and updating their phones or all this kind of nonsense, just to wait until you give them the chance to have an implant in their hand and tell them it's by Apple, and just wait until they start jumping over themselves to get a chance to do it. Zach, what say you?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be out of force. It's going to be out of consent. I think people are going to willingly take these things on, whether it's through the idea about security or about being the next level of technology or being through convenience. People will be naive to the more sinister undertones of what the motives are behind the reasoning for it, but I think it will be very soon, if not now, in the next few years. And it'll start in a fairly innocent way, I think, and then it'll become more sinister.
Lindsay, I'll throw back to you, mate.
Yeah, I've got 2 points to make. Some years ago now, people were getting very worried in Queensland because they were taking blood samples from newly born babies, and they were worried about the DNA, keeping a DNA record and what have you without the parents' consent. But then other people started saying, yeah, well, when they put the hypodermic in there, how do you know they're not pumping a chip into the baby as well as taking blood out afterwards? So, you've got to be a little bit careful. Some people can go a bit over the top, but then again, with these people's track record, they may well be doing those things. The second point is, I know a woman who's had a number of dogs that have been chipped, and those dogs develop cancers and things like that around the chips. So I would be very concerned if I was a person having something like that put inside me, because I just don't trust them.
Yeah, you have an excellent point there, Lindsay. I guess there's a couple of reasons to be concerned here. On the micro level, being chipped with something, how do we know what that's going to do to us long term? Where are there long term studies? As far as I'm aware, there aren't any. If you can put a chip in someone for 50 years and have a big big study with a big sample size and a control group, a proper scientific study, and then in 50 years we find that being chipped doesn't lead to higher rates of cancer or other problems, sure, maybe then we can consider it on the micro level. But as it stands right now, you're taking a massive risk putting this kind of stuff into you without any of those studies to prove that it's okay over the long term of a life. Then you've got the macro concerns like who is using this data, what are they using the data for, how long until our money goes onto these chips, and then once our money's on these chips, how easy is it for them just to shut us down if they don't like us talking about, for instance, a royal commission into child sex abuse? Ethan, what say you?
I think a lot of good points have been made. There obviously is a lot of concerns for this, and it's not just on all the levels that have been touched. My fear is that just a digitalization, got it out there, of human beings. You know what I mean? And the fact is that you don't know what's in these microchips. You don't know who's developing them. You don't know what the motives are behind it. And it goes back to speaking about eugenics. You know, who knows that those chips have been tested safely for cancer? Who knows that they couldn't just release a toxin in your body when a switch is given? You know what I mean? When the call is given, it's just unbelievable. And to masquerade it behind this ideal that it's going to improve our lifestyles because we're going to be more safe and secure, we're going to be able to easier access our personal data, our details and whatnot. It's just madness. It's absolute madness. And the problem is that the mainstream media and the government establishment are pushing this as a good thing. And as long as they control the minds of the majority of the masses through the television and through these news websites, people are just going to go along with it. And it's a scary thing to think, because once they get past this step of normalizing it as acceptable, what's next? And you need to think about that, because now over in the United States, they're talking about jailing anti-vaccination parents, trying to make it mandatory, trying to draw a line between how the state is better for you and they know better ideals. So who's not to say that can't come to the chips as well, Jono?
Well, Ethan, let's think about it though. What if they give you 10 free apps with your new Apple iChip? Would you consider it then?
Is one of them an Australian Roundtable app to listen to? Or?
What about you, Zach? I'll give you the final word on this one before we press on. What do you think about all of what we discussed?
Well, I think the RFID chip is probably going to be used in the future as a means of control, but initially I think it will be used as a means of technology, the next level of, the smartphones and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's kind of a scary proposition to have something implanted in your body. You have no idea what it's made of, but more importantly, people will be able to track where you are, where you've been, how many phone calls you've made with it, if or whatever it does, and if you have money in it or passwords, who controls that. It's a very scary proposition.
Yeah, I said I'd give you the final word just so that you'd say something, but I've got more to say on this topic. I'll read out a few comments from the live chat. Robert Alexander says that he thinks insurance companies will demand businesses have employees chipped for security reasons. That's possible. The way that I see this going down would be, just suppose, hypothetically, there's a school abduction where there are these bad kiddie abductors going around, and it turns out that if only we knew where the kids were, we could have saved them. They were alive for 2 days. If only we knew where they were. And next thing, they've got vans going out to schools for voluntary chip implants. You imagine if the mouth-breathing masses out in the suburbs are told, not just the suburbs, I shouldn't say that, just the people of Australia, the masses are told, well, we're going to be giving out voluntary chip implants, and look what all these good parents are doing. Then they show a montage of 3 or 4 parents going, oh, I had to get little Johnny chipped. He didn't like it at first, but he's okay now. They would swallow this nonsense up just like that, and that's actually how I think it might go down.
I completely agree.
They'll stage a nonsense school abduction or something like this, get it put in the kids who are young, because people like Lindsay, good luck chipping Lindsay. You come to Lindsay's house and try and chip him. It's not going to end well for either of you. The same even goes for people our age, in our late teens, 20s, 30s, whatever. Some of us are wise to this, but the kids, what say do they get in it? You know what I mean? They've got no say. So chip them when they're young, they get used to it. They don't know any different. Lindsay, what say you?
Yeah. When you talk about that, we were the same with injections. you'd roll up to the school, you'd have a letter from your parents saying, no, he's not going to get an injection. The nurse would roll it up, throw it in the bin, and jab the needle into you anyway. And then later on, we find out, oh, it's got monkey virus in it or something that passes on to, to your kids and their kids. And, so my thing is, don't trust these people at all, no matter what they say. That's my take on everything they do.
Boy, Ethan, Robert Alexander has a better offer. If 10 apps isn't good enough for you, what if they chuck in 100 flybys points?
5 cents.
Yeah, I learnt what flybys were last week, so it's a good offer.
We're all learning a lot of things. So hey, thanks to everyone in the live chat. We're up to roughly 50 live viewers, which is fantastic. We do need to press on, but since this was your topic, boys, I'll throw over to you both for one final comment. Lindsay, any final thoughts on this topic?
No, I've said everything I want to say. Thanks.
And you, Ethan?
I just want to reiterate what Lindsay said. Just don't trust the establishment and stay vigilant. That's my final thoughts.
And look who's come to life. It looks as though Zach has a thought to add. Please, Zach, grace us with your voice.
Yeah, well, it's a good point you made there, Lindsay, about the vaccines being kind of socially unacceptable in your time, and now they're being forced on us. Like when I was last on in episode 14, we talked about vaccines becoming mandatory. So if it's taken one generation for vaccines to become from socially acceptable to mandatory, it'll probably take about the same time or less for RFID chipping to become from socially acceptable to mandatory.
Look, I do want to press on because time is of the essence, but I do just want to ask you, Zach, just a hypothetical question. They come to your house, just say it does go the way of trying to do this and force you to do it. They come to your house and say, we're putting a chip in you. What do you do?
It's hard to know what you do, exactly. That's a good point.
I like to think that there are a lot of people out there who, okay, they'll cop this, they'll cop that, they'll cop you stealing their money from you through increased taxes and bank bail-ins and all of this. They'll cop longer hours at work. They'll cop the fact that houses now cost so much you need 2 incomes to afford the house. They'll cop all of these things, but if you decide to get physical and try and force them to take a chip into their body, that's when they say enough is enough. Now we're getting serious. I like to think that if it ever came to that point, that people would rise up against it, but we won't know until we're in that situation. And let's hope that by spreading the word about these things in advance, we can avoid it ever getting that far. We do have to move on to the next topic now, though, boys, because time is running out.